earlier it was something which was having some 658 sections. So now we are hearing from all the administrators and ministers that they are planning to cut down the number of sections and all. This has really happened in the case of the Companies Act. So they have brought it down to 470 sections. From 658 to 470. They are not as successful as the West Bengal government, but still they have done it. But here lies the catch. What has happened is, these 470 sections, they are not self-contained. And many of the sections have accompanying rules which are again being subdelegated. And many of them are not even being framed. So it is going to happen. So what we were earlier seeing was more or less a self-contained kind of legislation, the Companies Act 1956. Of course there were some rules, but the Companies Act clearly specified what had to be done. But now that may not be the case. These 470 sections will be there, plus there will be a lot of other rules and sub-rules, regulations and all, which might actually complicate things. Because right now what is there in the statute, somebody cannot really overrule. So this, if you are leaving a lot of things for the bureaucrats to decide, things can actually become very complicated. So in the guise of actually bringing down the number of pages or sections, we should not be actually complicating things. But I am not saying this is going to complicate, but this might happen because all these 470 sections, there could be corresponding rules which are getting framed. But one good thing which is happening now is, at least the public consultation part is really improved. Why I would say is, right now also you can actually visit the Ministry of Corporate Affairs website and go through almost all the suggestions, the rules which they are given, and you can also put your comments. I hope they will actually go through the comments and incorporate them. But that is a good way of doing it. Earlier also it was being done, but this kind of internet platform was not available. So I am sure this would be much more effective than the earlier days of consultation. So that way it is really helping us. All the technologies are really helping us. The second one is, and this particular law also promotes the objective of small companies also. So this is one good thing to take from this legislation. They also talk about a one-person company, which should be of great importance to all the smaller entities and all. So all this MSME sector can actually look forward to that. Even they also have a concept of small companies. So Ministry of Corporate Affairs, I am sure as a regulator, is going to really play a major role in the next 5 years. Not in the next 5 years. India's most prominent Companies Act was enacted in 1913. Even before that also we had a law, but the 1956 Act, before that the most important law which dealt with companies was Companies Act 1913. So it's just 100 years from that. And 1913, when it was drafted, Kolkata was the place to be in. And in 2013, also we have to actually make Kolkata to be the best place. So that's, in a way, if you are going to look back, things are also going to fall in place, I am sure. So this is what I am talking about the first important regulator, which is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Second one I would say would be SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India. Here actually we should see there are certain success stories, especially in the case of SEBI and all. We have seen some of the important changes which have happened recently, or at least in the last 2 decades or so. And many of us always criticize our regulators, or many of us always say this has been very bad, we are not doing our job. But if you actually see the manner in which either the Ministry of Corporate Affairs or SEBI has reacted to a very important crisis in 2009, I won't name the company, it happened in January 2009. Almost 1 lakh jobs were at stake. The company was headquartered in a southern city, I will not name which city. That city was competing with Bangalore, again I will not name the city. Still, immediately this particular crisis was unfolded on Jan 7, 2009. Within 3-4 days government acted, SEBI also acted, a very powerful or a very immediate response was done in the manner of superseding the board and putting a new board consisting of 3 eminent persons who actually made sure that the crisis was, they could actually get over the crisis. The company was brought back to rails, and whatever regulatory hurdles were there with respect to acquisition of that company by another company and all, which we know it was acquired by Tech Mahindra through Venture Bay. Everything was done by SEBI to make sure that the process was really smooth. So let us also look into the positive aspects. Of course, we have a lot of challenges which we are facing, but if we had allowed that company to go down, it would have been a severe crisis. But immediately the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, they all reacted, and at least we have one successful story there. So let us at least say that. So I am sure this, if we are going to learn some lessons from this, similar instances in the first place can be prevented, and secondly, there can be effective checks and barriers for having an institutionalized response. So if I had to specifically mention some points, when this company's acquisition was being done, there was some crisis with respect to what price the acquirer has to pay. Immediately SEBI brought another new chapter saying you don't have to follow the normal pricing mechanism dealing with certain types of companies. They said, okay, we can, the takeover board can even give an exemption. Otherwise, nobody would have purchased at that price, because the normal purchase price was the last 6 months acquisition, the average price, or the last 14 days price. And you know, this particular company's share price came crashing after this crisis. So what I am saying is, we have responded. In certain instances, we have done a very good job. But unfortunately, those instances are very rare. But we also need to highlight them, so that this will really help our other regulatory bodies to emulate them. So, having mentioned Ministry of Corporate Affairs and SEBI, let me talk about the other important regulator, third most important regulator, which is very new. It could have been much older had there been no dispute between the judiciary and the executive. But anyway, those things have already happened. I am talking about the Competition Commission of India. The law was passed in 2002. Of course, we wasted 6 to 7 years on arguing who will become the boss, all those things. Of course, we have to forget all these things. But after incorporating, after the law was enacted, there were a lot of fears within the industry that this is actually going to hamper all these mergers and acquisitions, because this particular law dealt with certain thresholds, certain kinds of notification mechanism for M&As. But that has not happened. If you see the last 2 years history of all the cases being where the CCA has given permission, though the law mandates CCA, the law gives CCA the power to take up to 7 months to go through each and every deal. On an average, they have not taken more than 2 months, which again is a positive thing. So what I am trying to do is, I am just highlighting only the positive things. Of course, the number from my side is very less, but still I am trying to do that. So if you analyze the past 300 cases or 400 M&A deals which have happened in the last 2 years, where CCA's permission was sought, CCA did it in a very, very effective manner. Almost, they haven't taken more than 2 months in any case. And a very interesting decision where there was an acquisition by Diageo in the case of United Spirits. It's a very recent order, a very good order. You should actually, any student who deals with mergers and acquisitions involving competition regulators should read that. They had actually analyzed how this particular acquisition is going to have effect on competition, and also categorizing different segments of alcoholic beverages. Then you will even find out how many types of alcoholic beverages are there, who are the customers for that. So it's a very interesting piece of reading with thorough research. I'm not telling, it's not simply something which they have done. So what I'm saying is, our regulatory bodies are slowly coming of age. Let us give them some more time. I'm sure our regulatory bodies are also capable. over a period of time we will definitely develop. Let us also not forget that in 1991, 92 and all, if somebody was going to invest in shares, people used to call them as big gamblers. That has completely changed, purely because of intervention by SEBI. I'm not saying there are no scams happening. It will still happen, but the regulatory response has completely changed. Again, contrast this with the scam which I mentioned in 2009 vis-a-vis the NSCL fiasco, where the regulatory response was totally different. So what I am saying is it will take some time, but I am sure as a country, the regulators over a period of time will mature, and this will definitely set the trend for more and more kinds of responses. But anyway, let me also, just as Dr. Rajat was mentioning, let me also mention to you one problem which I am foreseeing here. This is about the regulatory conflicts, because everybody wants to protect their turf and if possible try to enter into others' turf. So as Dr. Rajat was mentioning, recently we came across a very interesting case involving ONGC, where there was multiple regulators trying to assert jurisdiction. One was the PN, Petroleum Natural Gas Regulatory Board, and the other one was Competition Commission of India. And both, if you actually look the provisions, both have some kind of regulatory jurisdiction over that. Again, last year, 2 years back, there were issues with respect to SEBI as well as IRDA over regulation of ULIPs. Because SEBI, because it is a unit linked plan, SEBI said it's my rule. I will have the jurisdiction. And because it is an insurance linked product, it is offered by an insurance company, IRDA said I have the rule. So this is some area where we need to apply more caution, we need to do more studies. But otherwise I am sure that when the next meeting is being held in 2023, we all will be praising our regulators. Thank you so much. Thanks once again for inviting me.
Have you got any questions?
One or two questions.
Please go ahead. I am Professor Amita Prasad. I would ask a question of Mr. Navroj as well as Rajat, who have been complimenting each other in their talks. That's nice to enjoy. But as Professor of Economics, this concept of PPP, we find very puzzling sometimes, because it appears to us that all the good will be enjoyed by one group, and wherever it's unpleasant, it will be the duty of the other group to look after it. Now, successful PPP models in India are very rare, right? Very rare successful models. That's why when I hear people about, talking about PPP in very affirmative terms, I find it a bit difficult to take as a teacher of economics. That's the first thing. First observation, maybe you would respond. How many successful models of PPP do we have? That's one. Maybe Navroj could take it, or Mr. Katoria also. The other interesting observation by Unni, let me come to that. He mentioned at the beginning of his talk on education and a possible regulator coming into the scene. Now, many of the universities currently in India are a bit apprehensive about foreign entry, foreign universities entering India. Now, in India, there are a lot of regulations on universities already in terms of acts. What will be the status of the foreign universities entering India in terms of legal procedure, and who the regulator could possibly be? This is something that is of interest to me because I have been in education all my life. So the first part I would like Navroj maybe to take it on, or Rajat, whoever. More or less talks were similar. I found very amusing the observation on what independence really means in a regulator. I am seeing all bureaucrats everywhere, you know. Wherever there's a regulator, it's a bureaucrat. So is a bureaucrat supposed to be independent as a person? That is just an observation, but the two questions I have left before you. Thank you very much. Would you please respond? Please.
Hello. I'm Shurgata Moitra. My question is, it's more of a form of an observation because Dr. Kathuria, you spoke about regulators in the infrastructure space, and you also showed the huge gross capital formation in infrastructure which needs to happen in the 12th five-year plan. Now, my observation is, if you really look at the infrastructure sector regulators, regulators at the central level can only provide guidelines, but looking at the large diversity of the market of India and the target segments or the target stakeholders, diversity of stakeholders across the country, it has to be, the regulations at the central level has to be translated into policies at the state level. Otherwise you cannot probably cater the the different diverse stakeholders which is there for implementing the projects. A very typical example would be, you know, now we are talking about privatization of, or looking at the operation and maintenance of airports and everything. So probably the regulations or the, you know, the model documents which are applicable at the central level for a Chennai airport cannot be applicable to a Lucknow airport. So this kind of, bringing in this kind of flexibilities at the state level is something which I wanted to, you know, put your attention to. And secondly, you know, as I would also respond to sir, as you said, you know, PPPs primarily has not been successful because I think the basic understanding of PPP has been wrong in our case. I mean, we look at private investment on PPP, but it's actually the operational efficiency. The operational efficiency is something we should be looking forward to private business on a PPP and not the investment. Because the taxpayers' money, a large part of taxpayers' money should actually get into the investment move. So, I mean, these are the only two things. Thank you.
Please, the last question and then we'll wrap.
So it has been said that the success of the IT sector today has been largely due to the fact that there has been no regulation. So I'd like you to comment on that. And the next thing is the success of this 2009 scam hit company was due not to the intervention of the regulator, but they put in place a 3-member board of absolute integrity who set in process the sale of the company to Tech Mahindra due to a process of transparent bidding. So I'd like your comment to that. So it's not the regulator that has done it, but it's the integrity of the 3-member board led by Deepak Parekh, which has set in motion the ball for the regulation or the purchase of the company by Tech Mahindra.
Thanks. I'll give staccato comments. I can't say I'm going to give answers. Sir, to your last question, I think you've answered your own question in a sense. If you have competent people with integrity, whether they are specially created for a specific purpose or whether they are, you know, in a more permanent regulatory landscape, I think you've answered that question. If we get that, then we address the problem of independence or of regulation. The problem in India, as Professor Chatterjee just pointed out, as well, has been, you know, there's been a monopolization of the regulatory agency process in India, and that monopolization hasn't necessarily worked to India's advantage. But if we are able to get that, the names that you mentioned, highly credible, very popular people, then I think that you can take care of the independence or the regulatory process. The question about, I'll just come to the question of PPPs, maybe just, but the federal structure of regulatory, I think that's absolutely right. You have to kind of decentralize regulation as much as possible, not only to the state level, but there is a move now in India to actually decentralize regulation to the city level, to the municipal level, because you're going to have to do regulation of urban transport, like the London Metropolitan Authority regulates all integrated transport for the London metropolitan area. This includes buses, metros, and regulation, as I said, goes beyond pricing. It goes to, you know, standards, it goes to safety, etc. So there's a London Metropolitan Authority that does that. So regulation at the center will be kind of, as you say, on principles, on guidelines. Implementation will have to be done by the state level, and Navroz can probably say much more on this because he's worked closely with state level regulators, and I think the CEA and the state level regulators have followed the model of some amount of decentralization. I'm absolutely with you when you say that PPPs have not worked, and in fact, in my talk, I did say that PPPs have become a kind of opportunity of socializing the losses and privatizing the benefits, but PPPs in India and in some of the Latin America haven't been very successful, and there have been protests on the street against privatization and PPPs in Latin America because of high prices. But the benefits of PPPs, you know, whether it's operational or whether it's investment, benefits of PPPs are undoubtedly, there's an improvement in the quality of service, there's an increase in the price, and that has to be managed.